Hello, esteemed participants. Thank you for joining our next session on international cooperation in the development of supply chains for critical materials in Kazakhstan. Countries around the world are racing to secure reliable supply chains for critical materials. These resources are essential for our transition to a clean energy economy and technological innovation. Kazakhstan, with its rich mineral resources, has the potential to be a vital part of this global supply chain. But how can the country develop its potential, address challenges, and find ideal international partners? While our distinguished experts will be discussing these questions, we also invite you, the audience, to share your views. Your participation is completely voluntary and your responses will be kept confidential. Please scan the QR code to open the survey. Let's talk about unlocking Kazakhstan's critical materials in critical times.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the session on critical minerals and the supply chains. We've got a very interesting group of speakers lined up for you this afternoon. And first up is Robin Simpson, who is going to talk about an overview of critical minerals projects in Kazakhstan. So please take it away, Robin.
Thank you, and good afternoon. This presentation was a bit of a team effort by several members of the SRK Geology Group in Almaty, particularly acknowledge Evgeny Galaktinov and Erkajan Rakhimjanova, who are not here this year at MINEX, but they were a big help for assembling the information. The working title of this presentation was Economically Viable Critical Minerals Projects, but as we developed the material, we found that there just wasn't enough publicly available information to support that ambition as we intended. So the talk evolved to be more about a geological overview of deposits and occurrences. Now, the first question to answer was which minerals and materials are on the list of critical minerals? And I think Anthony's talk coming up will probably go into this more. But we took a working definition from a USGS publication that seemed to define the official US policy at the moment. And coloured on that periodic table are all the different elements that were mentioned as critical raw materials. The ones in red are the ones we're going to focus on in this presentation. If you're looking across several different definitions, you can find just about everything on the periodic table is on someone's definition of a critical mineral. The only element which really doesn't show up on any of the definitions is gold. On this particular definition, they didn't list uranium, which was interesting, but it's certainly on many other definitions of critical minerals. So the short list that I'll go through in this presentation and show some maps for each are these 7 listed here. Certainly copper and uranium are on that list too, and very important for Kazakhstan. But we decided just to focus on perhaps the ones that don't have such high profile in Kazakhstan. So to set the context for the maps coming up, a very quick introduction to the geology of Kazakhstan. In the west of the country are the basins that host the oil and gas deposits. In the northwest is where the Ural Mountains comes down and enters Kazakhstan, and that's where most of the chromium deposits and iron ore is. In the centre you have the Mesozoic and Cenozoic sediments that host the uranium deposits, and in the east is a complex amalgamation of terrains that host belts of copper, gold and polymetallic deposits. So starting with lithium, there's both the main types, the brines and the veins or the pegmatites are represented in Kazakhstan. Many of the brine deposits coincide with the areas of interest for the oil exploration, so there can be a conflict of interest in which to develop, and that seems to have locked up the development of some of the lithium potential in those brines in the west. But there is also a significant representation of the pegmatite-style deposits in the east. But overall, the information for lithium is quite limited compared to other elements at the moment. It seems to be a legacy of secrecy that was in place for several years that has only been recently lifted. And it's a very early stage in terms of defining the potential and quantifying the resources and reserves. The nickel cobalt, in Kazakhstan's context, it's not a particularly significant, or not as significant as many of the other things that Kazakhstan has. And in terms of reserves globally, Kazakhstan sits at about 20-something on the list. So not a particularly big thing for Kazakhstan, but there are some potential at that south end of the Ural range, the northwest of Kazakhstan. There seems to be various nickel laterite deposits defined, and in the eastern part of the country, there's nickel occurs in deeper polymetallic associations, more nickel sulfide. So currently Kazakhstan doesn't really have a significant amount of nickel production. For titanium, Kazakhstan is certainly significant in this area. The Ust-Kamenogorsk plant produces over 10% of the world's annual demand for titanium, and that draws on deposits from various places in Kazakhstan. The red dots there are the main titanium deposits, which are from weathering and placer deposits of ilmenite. The yellow ones are where titanium is produced as a byproduct. So as I said, it's a significant portion of the global demand for titanium is produced by Kazakhstan, and an even larger proportion of the European demand and the global aerospace industry requirements. And with these titanium ores, there are byproducts associated, such as rare earths, which are produced by the same plant. For chromium, Kazakhstan is has the second greatest amount of resources in the world, and is a very significant producer. And almost all that production is coming from the Kepesir Massif, which is where several of those red dots there and the black ellipse on the left are all overlapping. So that's a huge amount of production coming from a very small area. Though there is potential in other areas of Kazakhstan for chromite deposits as well, particularly the Charsky belt, which is in the east of the country. For vanadium, SRK knows these deposits quite well. We've done resource estimates for a couple of them in the last year. There's one main area, the Karatau Basin, which has several deposits that are based on carbonaceous shales. And this type of mineralisation has about 10 times the vanadium content of mineralisation associated with vanadium coming as a byproduct from titanium magnetite ores. There are some other locations around Kazakhstan where vanadium potential exists, but that the Karatau area that hosts Kurumsak and Belausa is definitely the standout. Okay. Tungsten, Kazakhstan nominally has quite large resources or reserves of tungsten, which are really a carryover from the Soviet era. It seems as though production mostly stopped in the 1990s due to low prices, but there's a lot of potential still there, particularly around Karaganda. And the last one to look at is rare earths. And rare earths are a number of different types of deposits which have very different aspects in terms of economics, in terms of extraction, processing, the balance of heavy rare earths and light rare earths. Most of the deposits can be grouped into one of these 4 types, and Kazakhstan seems to have potential for all 4 of them. The information available for rare earths was a bit like lithium, it was very limited and seems to have been secretive until recently. One of the best pieces of information we found was this US Geological Survey map, which shows the occurrences classified by deposit style around Kazakhstan. In the northwest there, where those brown triangles are, that's potentially the iron absorption style of rare earth deposit. And then there's other belts there in the north and centre, which are associated with the carbonatite and alkaline intrusives, and some significant belts just across the border in Kyrgyzstan. Late last year, the Kazakhstan's Ministry of Industry and Construction announced a $25 million initiative in the rare earths and rare metals area. So the intention there is to expand the resource base and introduce new technologies, modernise production, develop regulations and lift some of the secrecy. In 2022, production of rare earths and rare metals, so that's combining the rare earths with some of the other things that were on the critical minerals list, like niobium and tantalum. Total production amounted to a value of about $300 million. So to put that in context as a conclusion, this chart here shows Kazakhstan's exports in 2023. About 70% of the export value was just coming from oil. The next 2 bars along the right is really the next bar on the left is uranium, and then copper, also with about $3 billion worth of exports. Ferroalloys altogether about 2 or 3 billion. What wasn't shown on that chart but we've added is the gold production, which based on the 130 tonnes produced last year is equivalent to about 10 billion. So these critical minerals and rare earths are just tiny in terms of exports at the moment, but there's a lot of potential there given that there's secrecy being lifted and we're finding out more, but still a long way to go before it replaces the big ones of the oil, the gold, uranium and copper. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. Next up, we've got Anthony Benham, who is going to be asking about who metals, critical metals are critical to who.
Thanks, Mike. Can you hear me okay? Am I coming through okay? Yeah? Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure for me to be presenting to you this afternoon. Thank you to the presenters for the opportunity to present. So the title of my talk is Critical to Whom? Should more minerals in Central Asia be classified as strategic? Which I thought was quite an intriguing sort of title to put across, and I'm not saying I'm necessarily going to be answering these questions now, but I thought it'd be an interesting point of discussion. And it actually follows on really nicely from Robin's earlier talk, where Robin was talking about a whole series of critical or strategic minerals, and I'm actually going to be focusing on 2 that Robin didn't talk about, so it actually follows on quite nicely. So this is the structure of the presentation. So I'm going to give a very brief introduction to who the MSA Group are, for those who don't know, and then talking about what critical minerals are and the various types of critical mineral lists that are currently known. Then I'm going to be focusing on 2 types of critical minerals on many lists around the world that are perhaps not as frequently mentioned in many presentations, fluorspar or fluorite and graphite, and why these are important, why these are critical, and the opportunities for exploring for these and developing these within the Central Asian region. And then focusing more widely in terms of how Central Asia can fit in with the supply requirements of critical minerals in the future, and then summarising everything at the end. Okay, so MSA Group, who are we? So we are a technical consultancy for mining and exploration. We are originally headquartered in South Africa. We've now got various offices around the world, including here in Astana, where we operate under the name of MSA Minerals Consulting with our partner Minerals Operating. I'm the director of the UK office, recently established last year, and our recent office The latest office is MSA Arabia in Saudi Arabia. And like many consultancies similar to ourselves, we undertake work across the mining life cycle. This is just a small sample of the types of work that we get involved with. I'm not going to dwell on this now. You can read this at your leisure later. So critical minerals then. So I'm sure that most people in the room are aware of what critical minerals are, but this is just one of the several definitions that you can find online. So they are elements or materials basically that are essential in the functioning of our modern lives, and they are not easily substituted, and they're also vulnerable to supply disruptions essentially. In terms of who they're critical to, the lists are devised or they're based on the perceived criticality of those materials to individual countries or regions. And in terms of what defines what makes a material critical or strategic itself, this list varies, and it depends very much on economic effects, supply issues, effects of potential disruption, and technological advances, of course. And the list can go up and down as technology and these factors vary. So in terms of who defines what critical minerals actually are, there are several organisations around the world that come up with different lists, and I'll go through these just now. These are some of the lists of some of the organisations who compile these lists. So we've got the European Commission, USGS, BGS, World Trade Organization, and IEA, to name just a few. I'm not aware of any Central Asian lists, although I know Russia has a list of critical minerals as well, but specifically within the Central Asian region, I'm not aware of any lists, and I was suggesting that perhaps it might be time for a list to be put together for perhaps the Central Asian region. So this is one of many maps that I'm sure you'll see within this session later today. It just highlights basically the reliance that the world has on a limited number of small countries in the world that supply the bulk of many of the world's critical minerals. And as I mentioned before, stronger market prices can actually change the list itself, and they can allow opportunities for developing and discovering mineral deposits, critical mineral deposits that perhaps were considered previously uneconomic. These can actually move into the list or be taken off them as situations change. So focusing on the actual list themselves then, this is, I'm not going to go through all of these elements themselves. USGS is just one of the organisations that compiles a list of critical minerals. Now they've recently, relatively recently, in 2022, updated their list, which now includes 50 elements or minerals in brackets, and those are listed down here. The BGS also completes its own list as well. They undertook it slightly differently, so they went through a sort of a categorization, if you want, validation of a candidate lists of 26 minerals, and of those lists, 18 were identified as being critical. Now, admittedly, the list is a lot smaller than the USGS because the BGS lists actually lumps together things like the different rare earth elements, whereas they're individually specified by USGS. And finally, certainly not least, the European Commission also compiles its own critical minerals lists, the first of which was produced in 2011, which found that there were 14 what's called critical raw materials, and they're listed here. And you'll notice that the list has been frequently revised every few years, and the list of critical raw minerals or raw materials is increasing. Generally speaking, the elements are being added to the list rather than being taken away, but there are occasions where some of the elements perhaps drop off for various reasons. And broadly speaking, you'll find that there are, so the lists are continually changing, and more minerals, as I say, are being classified as critical. The lists are broadly comparable, but there are some differences between the different lists. For example, titanium is not currently classed as a critical or a strategic mineral on the BGS list, whereas it is on the USGS list. And this depends basically on the perception of criticality to that country or region, as I say. I'm going to be focusing on fluorspar or fluorite and graphite for the rest of this talk. Okay, because as I say, these are not particularly well studied or well talked about at conferences, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to discuss these. So fluorspar, or commonly known as fluorite as well, is essentially a calcium fluoride mineral. It's essential, it's a key component in the construction of electric vehicle batteries. And I think this article that I've put on the left side of the screen were very recently published, which indicates the importance of fluorite in the as a critical mineral in the supply of battery metals in particular, and highlighting the potential supply issues that the world faces for this material in the future. China dominantly produces 2/3 of the world's production and consumes a similar amount as well, but the resources within China are being rapidly depleted, and without additional exploration and discoveries in country, they're likely to lead to potential shortages within the country itself. They're now reducing, thank you, they're now reducing the tariffs to allow more fluorspar to be imported. Moving on quickly to graphite, it's another key component in battery metals, in electric vehicles in particular for batteries. At the moment, it's produced dominantly between synthetic graphite and natural graphite. Synthetic graphite is being increasingly used, but is extremely carbon intensive to produce this. So it remains to be seen whether it's going to actually be a takeover in the future. So the Central Asia region in general is, as I'm sure many people know, is a vast repository or storage, if you like, for many of these critical minerals. So manganese, 38%, a third of the world's chromium, and many of the other minerals listed in here. Kazakhstan itself is a dominant minerals producer, produces many of the world's critical materials, including fluorspar already. Very brief summation here of the location of existing known fluorite and graphite occurrences, highlighted by the stars here. And basically, the message that I want to put across really is that although these have been known, and in the case of fluorite, these are being produced quite readily in Kazakhstan at the moment, there is further potential for discoveries. A lot of these were mapped and recorded by Soviet expeditions who were at the time not particularly interested in graphite deposits. So it's quite likely that a lot of these areas that I've highlighted may actually yield further discoveries. Where does Central Asia fit in? Well, you know, I'm sure everybody is aware of the current geopolitical tensions around the world at the moment. Many Western countries in particular, as well as countries like China, are looking to source their critical minerals from a variety of areas, and Central Asia certainly meets the bill in terms of being able to supply a lot of the world's minerals in the future. So in summary then, I think generally you can see that more minerals are being classified as strategic or critical, and they're on critical minerals lists that are being updated on a fairly frequent basis. They're defined by countries or regions based on that particular region or country's perception of criticality, and they can have regional differences depending, of course, on the availability of that particular material. Central Asian countries don't have their own critical minerals lists at the moment, but as I mentioned earlier on, perhaps they could do or should do in order to meet their own needs. This would be an interesting exercise to undertake, what are actually needed by the countries within the Central Asian region. But it's very, very well positioned, of course, to help meet the growing demand for the increase in production that everybody is predicting for critical minerals. And no doubt that this will happen with further discoveries and exploitation of those deposits. There is some potential for additional fluorspar or fluorite occurrences within Kazakhstan in particular, and the wider region, particularly in the west of Kazakhstan, where they might be located, for example, in the underexplored sedimentary basins. But additional exploration is required in order to understand whether they could potentially be economic. And my final point is, well, should more minerals be classified as strategic? Well, I suppose I don't really have an answer to the question, but I would say that the answer is possibly, and it obviously very much depends on the perception of criticality within an individual country, the geopolitical situation, access to supply, and the use of that mineral within a country or region in order to support industry. So with that, thank you very much for your attention, and yeah, enjoy the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Anthony. Next up, we have Yerjan Turkashev from Ernst & Young, and he's going to give us an analysis or present several detailed analyses of critical minerals. So take it away.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here and to develop a story after my fellow speakers to a much broader scale. But you're going to find some similarities, but maybe a little bit more data. Ernst & Young has prepared this January report, a detailed report on critical materials, and the main reason for that is how energy transition is driving this trend. Most of the trends is well known to us. I'll stop just briefly for you to see what kind of data you can find in the full report, and if you're interested in it, just please an electronic copy. Please see me after this session. So Anthony already mentioned that there is a no list, and there are several organizations where we try to look at the list of the critical materials is on the frequency how any state or organization names the critical material as one of the key element. But let me start with one of the key reasons for energy transition to be here today is net zero commissions. 2050, very stretched target. One maybe important figure to remember is that total commitments by now is almost 88% of total emissions and 90% of total GDP of the whole countries that are committed to net zero commitments. Moving on. Oops, sorry. Of course, the renewables and electric vehicles are the key reasons for the growth of demand for the critical raw materials. These two diagrams are here to show you that and below you can see that demand for fossil fuel based technologies is in order of magnitude less per unit of megawatt or the vehicle, how much they require some materials that are really is included into the list. The thing I mentioned earlier is that we try to count the frequency of how often a country or organization is listing this or that element as a critical raw material, and now you can maybe get a more sense of which is the most popular one, and going back to the ones that are not niche or are in the interest of some organizations or some countries, but not the majority. Not to forget, on the diagram on the right, you can see that the expected deficit or disparity between supply and demand is expected to be here by 2030, and even more so for cobalt, copper, lithium, and nickel, not surprisingly. Oops. Very briefly, this well-known fact on where the critical materials are mined and which country processes them the most. It's a nice picture that you can find in our full report. From exploration perspective, everyone says that the budgets are getting bigger, not that many significant discoveries are following these expenses, and the latest numbers for 2022 continue this trend. On the diagram below, in the bottom side, you can see the average expected lead time from discovery to production, and it is 15 to 25 years, and this gives another pressure for the targets of 2035, which are already very stretched, not saying about the 2050 targets. The world is working on the options to level out some risks. The recycling is something which is more tangible today, but even by 2040, as IEA forecasts, only 10% of the raw materials for the batteries will be available from the recycling, which is not giving that much hope to cover the deficit. Substitution and innovation are something which is challenging for many organizations. As prices rise, many start to look in to hope for the technology to develop further and get the break-even in substituting, for example, copper for aluminum. This is probably the most unexpected surprise, which can positively affect the entire forecast for the critical materials market in the long term. If we look at the broader region, not just Kazakhstan, if you look at the Central Eastern, Southern Europe, as well as the Central Asia, we can see many players down the value chain. This calls for more cooperation, as none of the countries can compete with China or some other developed countries, and that's what we see from the latest development during recent years between Kazakhstan and European Union and other countries, companies exploring opportunities in Kazakhstan and seeing how what place Kazakhstan can play in the value chain for the critical materials. At the end, I'll stop shortly on the conclusions from our report. 8 points. The first and most obvious one is that the state support is required for the private capital to be successful. The sustainable production from mine to wheel should not be forgotten, because Kazakhstan is likely to target European, US markets or other developed countries which have also commitments for ESG standards. The value chain, which is distributed and requires Kazakhstan, as I mentioned before, to partner on technology with partner states or the businesses down the value chain. R&D, which is a very difficult task for Kazakhstan as a single country, requires us to partner as well. Exploration for critical materials is, as my fellow speakers told before, is very critical. We see that the state is planning to support the geological studies in rare metals, rare earth elements, but this is not the same as the whole list of critical raw materials, as I mentioned, as I showed before. And with recycling, which can affect both positively and negatively Kazakhstan from an aluminum perspective, but there is an opportunity for Kazakhstan to be a first mover advantage in the region, in Central Asia, to start recycling the batteries, which are starting, where EVs are becoming more and more popular nowadays. And the biggest role, obviously, from the government is the tax breaks, the infrastructure which the state can provide to investors from outside and inside Kazakhstan, which are planning or exploring opportunities in critical raw materials. Thank you so much. These are the key takeaways from our report. Happy to answer questions or share the report after the session. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Certainly a lot of interesting statistics to get your head around there. Next up, we have Nikolai Kirillov, who is an environmental consultant, a senior environmental consultant from SRK, and he is going to talk about memorandums of understanding. I'm sure you'll have seen a few of these knocking around, and he's going to take us through those and what we can conclude from them.
Thank you, Mike. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to this session. I'm going to try to give a glimpse into all those numerous memorandums of understanding which are being signed globally, and with some accent on what Kazakhstan is doing, which countries it cooperates with, and to unleash the topic, I'm going to try to ask myself a few questions and answer them. First of all, why and how do countries partner in terms of critical raw materials supply chains? What are the forms of partnership? Then I'm going to pass over to memorandums of understanding were signed by Kazakhstan. To date, any other cooperation which Kazakhstan is doing in the area of critical raw material supply, and summarize my presentation with key risks and opportunities. So I have to note in advance, as previous speakers also said, that the list of critical materials or raw materials or sustainable raw materials are different, and as well the terminology used in different documents is very different as well. So being a list of criticality for a particular metal, for example, defined by various reasons, like is it used in countries' defense applications, is it used for green energy transition, or is there a high-tech application where this metal is required. And I would also like to add that regarding the Kazakhstani list of rare materials, just recently Kazakhstan developed and approved a roadmap strategy for development of rare and rare earth elements for the next 5 years, 2024 to 2028. There is somewhat different classification from the list that you presented, but anyways, I think this is going to be a good starting point for Kazakhstan to define its list of rare earth materials and critical minerals. So, why do countries cooperate in the area of critical raw materials? I'm going to use the EU terminology. So, first of all, I would say that to mitigate the significant geopolitical risks which are existent and dependencies which exist due to uneven distribution of these critical raw materials between countries, just due to natural geological reasons. The supply chains, as we see globally, can be easily disrupted by, for example, a political will or a wish of some countries to use it as leverage or as a tool for making things the way they want. And this presents a significant risks to many countries which lack own resources or domestic supply for critical raw materials. Next, export restrictions. They've been mentioned multiple times already, and unfortunately this happens in the world, and critical raw materials are not only being banned for export or limited for export, but technologies for processing raw materials also being banned from exporting to other countries. So this is not a very positive dynamic. What else? The other reason why countries cooperate is, I think, to promote the high ESG standards for project development, because not always the legislation of a country with a high resource base is sufficient enough to do the mining and processing of the raw materials in a responsible way. So what do countries do? So first of all, it's an information exchange and sharing. Technology, policy coordinations, like for example, developing similar standards for sustainability of the rare earth projects. Diversifying sources, of course. As you will see further, it's not the case when like two countries cooperate and that's it. It's basically multilateral cooperation. Like one country can cooperate with many other countries by which they diversify the supply chains. And of course, the other reason, the other way they cooperate is by doing the joint research and innovation, which is critically important to meet the goals of energy transition and climate change mitigation. And this is just a graph which shows the demand of some metals by International Energy Agency. And as you see, it's going to be very, very high, and it's going to be ever increasing. So I did some research, and here is, by the way, QR code to IEA Critical Minerals Policy Tracker. Is a very useful tool to see what are the recent developments and what are the policies developed, critical minerals related, and I used largely this source to develop the timeline. This timeline only includes the specific documents between countries which are named memorandums of understanding. But I assure you that there are very many other ways of participation in the area of critical raw materials. It could be a scope of works on secure critical minerals, could be dialogue for frameworks, sectoral working groups, statements, compacts, and others. And as we see, one of the first memorandums was signed between EU and Ukraine in 2021, followed by Namibia. Then in November 2022, EU signed an agreement with Kazakhstan. And so the list follows. So basically, every month there is a sort of agreement related to critical minerals being signed. For example, just recently, 5th of April, EU signed a similar agreement, memorandum of cooperation with Uzbekistan. So there, EU is looking, as you see, to diversify the sources of raw materials, and there is competition in this arena as well. One of the interesting examples I would like to give, I'm not going to speak much about it, but it's a mineral security partnership originally created by EU countries, 14 countries, including the United States, announced in June 2022. And this partnership, there's a QR code to the document. It aims to catalyze global public and both public and private investment in responsible critical minerals supply chain. Together with the forming of this partnership, they also developed a set of ESG standards which are applicable to the projects which are being considered by this partnership. So moving on to Kazakhstan, there are few notable memorandums of understanding signed to date. First of all is Kazakhstan and European Union. It's been first signed at COP27 in November 2022 between Kazakhstan and European Union. Its full name is on Strategic Partnership on Sustainable Raw Materials, Batteries and Renewable Hydrogen Value Chains. So I must say that basically all of the memorandums of understanding have the similar purposes that they define. So it's closer economic cooperation and integration in value chains. It's increasing resilience of the raw material supply. It is exchange in areas of industry, innovation, research, development, including areas related to education. And generally, what the memorandums of understanding contain is that they have certain deadline on the further steps, and in this case it was a roadmap for 23-24 based on the initial memorandum, and it I'm not sure how well you can see that, but it includes a number more specific actions which will have to be completed by parties within the defined term. So it's in this case 23-24. Next one. Okay. Next one is Kazakhstan and United Kingdom. It was signed in March 2023. As I noted, it's basically same purpose: develop critical raw materials, resilience, promote adoption of high ESG standards, which is like I would like to underline because like there could be cases when in areas of very profitable materials or very promising materials like critical minerals, there could be like inadvertent use of lower ESG standards to catch up the moment of high revenues from those minerals. And similarly, Kazakhstan and UK signed the follow-up roadmap just recently in March 2024. And the last one I would like to mention is another form of partnership. It is between Kazakhstan and US in the format of C5. C5 is like Central Asian countries, which include Kazakhstan, Kyrgyz Republic, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and Uzbekistan. And this is a action promoted by United States, and they basically say that this is to counter China's dominance over critical minerals security worldwide. And this form of partnership, C5+1, is continuing, and it recently had its next step by having inaugural meeting in February 2024. So it's all just fresh and recent. And to summarize, I would like to, I'm going to skip this one, basically outline the key risks and opportunities for Kazakhstan. I'll start with the risks. Almost every session did speak on that stable political, legal, tax, and investment climate is vital to to have an image of a country which favors investment and which is safe for the investments. And again, based on what we heard today, there is a competition in Central Asian region. Other countries are looking into partnership as well. So we have to be heads up here. Other one is inability or of capacity or competency of the state to control booming set of projects of mining, which is by nature is harmful for the environment. And I would like to also notice this one. You quite often can hear on the news now that there is a like breakthrough when you in the battery technology, when you can basically replace lithium by iron oxide or something like that. Haven't been any serious risks yet, but definitely rapid technological advancement could impact certain commodities. And for the opportunities, it's like for any investment, it's enhancement of market access, trade, more access to expertise in technology, partnership, creating an image of a highly sustainable partner. And on the other one, I would like to say that Kazakhstan could mitigate geopolitical risks and trade disputes by becoming such a sustainable partner. And having access to all those technologies, it's of course helping Kazakhstan for the transition to the more greener future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nikolai. Next up, we have Johannes Bahr, who is from the EU delegation to Kazakhstan, and he's going to give a talk about what the European Union is doing in relation to critical minerals.
Thank you. Thank you. Pleasure to be here. So my name is Johannes Bahr. I'm head of cooperation in the EU delegation to Kazakhstan here. So I would like to start with a quick overview on EU-Kazakhstan relations and then give you a broad overview of what we are doing in the area of critical raw materials, which is a new area of cooperation for us. So we have now 31 years of relations between the European Union and Kazakhstan. We have the most advanced agreement in Central Asia between EU and Kazakhstan, an enhanced partnership and cooperation agreement, which is focusing also on trade aspects and is giving also some concrete obligations to both parties. This agreement entered into force in 2020. With the Russian aggression against Ukraine and the geopolitical changes, relations, political relations, but also economic relations between the EU and Kazakhstan have significantly deepened. There have been a number of high-level meetings. We had in 2023 the EU Central Asia Economic Forum in Almaty and other high-level visit. And overall, the EU is the most important trade and investment partner for Kazakhstan. Our cooperation priorities now include not only raw materials. This is also mostly about climate issues, water, energy, connectivity, Trans-Caspian corridor, a very important topic, also due to the geopolitical situation. But then also we are supporting rule of law in Kazakhstan as we do in other countries. Quick introduction also on EU policies on critical raw materials. The EU has just adopted a new very important set of legislation, the European Critical Raw Materials Act. Has set up within this act, which will be published in the next weeks, in fact, a new list for raw materials, which is now increasing to 34, in fact, for various industry, of course, focusing on the political objective to ensure the green transition in the European Union with the help of the needed critical raw materials. We have indeed established a number of strategic partnerships on raw materials, and Kazakhstan is one of them. Uzbekistan, as the next country in Central Asia, will basically add it to the list. So this European Critical Raw Materials Act is focused on the one hand on the development on critical raw materials and processing inside the European Union, of course, has its own ambitious targets on recycling, for example. But the other important part here maybe is that it also includes the identification of strategic projects within the EU, but also with partner countries. And in that context, our colleagues in Brussels, in fact, are organizing a first information meeting for companies, for economic actors, how the selection of these strategic projects will be done. We will do the first information session on the 30th of April. So we have heard already about the EU-Kazakhstan strategic partnership on sustainable critical raw materials, signature of the MOU in 22, agreement on a roadmap in 23, and this roadmap we will start now to update. This is a living document, so from summer this year we will take stock on what has been done in the different areas of this roadmap, and then update it for a new roadmap until for the next 2 years, basically. But we are now at a situation where I think we have established a very, very good political dialogue with the Kazakh government, with the Ministry of Industry, related agencies, as Kazakhstan is a very important partner for the European Union. What we need to do now is to bring that very good, excellent cooperation also at the project level, and bring European companies to Kazakhstan, Central Asia, facilitate their work, and have some concrete project. Yeah, we have indeed a very high potential, but there are also, of course, challenges in the EU. The awareness about Central Asia and Kazakhstan is still to be improved, let's say, for many economic actors who have been focusing in the past on G7 partners, or for example on African countries. We have a challenge in the draft legislation in Kazakhstan on export of critical raw materials, which apparently is intending to limit some exports. We think that this is not a good idea. Availability and accessibility of geological data, of course, is something which should be improved, and the promotion of international or European environmental and other standards is a very important aspect of also of our cooperation with all partner countries, including with Kazakhstan. We are about to launch some projects and very concrete activities also. We are in close cooperation with the European Bank for Research and Development. We have a joint project to support research activities on the tungsten deposit with Tauken Samruk. And we are developing a new project which will look at, in the context of trade facilitation, on critical raw materials along the Trans-Caspian corridor. It will have, on the one hand, it will focus on approximation of standards between not only Kazakhstan but all other Central Asian countries also, but also will try to support the identification of joint projects. So this first critical raw materials project of the first large project of the European Union and Central Asia on this topic will start in next year. That's it. So for us, this is a very important topic. Kazakhstan is a key partner. We have made already a lot of progress, I think, but of course we have to bring now it also to the level of a very concrete project, as we know that development of resources, including on critical raw materials, takes some time. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Johannes. Next up, we have Nariman Absametov, and he's from Tauken Samruk, and he's going to give us an overview of what Tauken Samruk is doing, which probably won't take very long.
Yes, thank you, Michael, and I'm very glad to see the strongest people here on the last panel with the speakers for the long day, and I'm very glad to see you all. So what about the critical materials of TKS here? I don't want to stop a lot about the potential of Kazakhstan. You know that I think the gentlemen before me, they talked a lot about it. So Kazakhstan is very rich on the resources. So we are the second on resources on chrome, second on tungsten. We are the top 10 producers of zinc, lead, copper, and other materials. But it doesn't mean that there is no potential. We see that it could be more. And we see that we could be the stable supply chain producer of all the many types of critical materials, and the goal of our company is to promote and to help and to increase the level of production and increase the number of production. So as you can see, starting from the 2018, according to the information from the ministry, it's been already more than 2,500 licenses were established, and we see that there will be new discoveries, and there will be more and more projects within the Kazakhstan. If we are talking about the TKS, so I'll give you the brief information, is a diversified company with more than 50 projects, with more than 15 partners. So one of our biggest partners is the Glencore in our Kazzinc asset, which is the biggest producer of zinc and lead and copper in the region, one of the biggest one. So we also have some greenfield projects with world-known and global companies such as Rio, such as Fortescue. Also we have the GVs with the mid-sized Turkish companies, and as Esan, and also we are working with the juniors as with the Kazakhstani companies. So actually what we are doing, so we are helping the global companies and foreigners to come to the country and to see this potential of the Kazakhstan and increase these values here. And our main interest, of course, is gold. So as we have a gold refinery plant and we produce more than 50 tons of refined gold. Also, we are very paying a huge attention on the critical materials, especially in copper and rare earth materials. So what about the developing of rare earth materials of Tauke and Samruk? So actually there is three main projects that we are paying attention and what we are developing. So my colleague from EBRD, they already told that we already start the joint project starting from the last year. It's actually divided for two parts. It's one part is for the lithium and the second for the tungsten, but I will start from the lithium. So we have the grant financing from EBRD, and we are planning to take the samples and to try to find some lithium on the water. So as you know, there is two types of producing of the lithiums. One from the salted waters, and the second from the ores. And there is a theory that Kazakhstan have something similar to the South American salted waters, where which is one of the biggest producers of lithium. Actually, we already have some samples, and the samples provide that the lithium is there, but everything is about the grades of lithium. Unfortunately, we could not reach, for now, we just started the work, it's only 6 months, and we just find there is a lithium starting from up to 30 ppm. For production, we need at least 50, but we are pretty close. And I think that with the support of European Union and the support of this research institutes and scientists, we can find the good solutions on that, and we are continuing this job. So it's a pretty long-term project that will be up to 2 years. But I hope that on the next MINEX we could share more information with you and saying that there is some lithium in Kazakhstan. The second project that we announced, it's exploration of rare earths on our Akbulak project. Our Akbulak project is it's not a deposit, it's like our license in a Kostanay region. And we are working here with Kov Capital, is an American-based company that is investing in Kazakhstan. So we already signed a binding term sheet on that, and we are planning to continue the exploration works. Exploration works will be at least for 3 years, and of course we are planning to have something feasible on that. So with the rare earths, is a pretty tricky thing that it could be, but it depends on what kind of proportion of the different rare earths. So you know that not all of them are very valuable. So everyone is looking for the rare earths that it is used in magnets. And the thing is, what is the proportion of that? And the second thing, of course, it's processing of that. So what is the processing cost of receiving these elements? And this is the key questions that we are facing now, and we are planning to answer for them with our partner within these 3 years of exploration and test works. And the last one, it's our works on tungsten projects. As you know, that Kazakhstan have the second largest reserves of tungsten aside of China. And we see that there is a huge potential on that. Unfortunately, having the second largest reserves, but we are not producing any tungsten, and we are planning to change it. On the portfolio of TKS, we have 2 deposits. It's Katpar and Kairakti, and they are the biggest one outside of China. And we are planning to proceed our researches on that for finding the good technologies of processing. So now we are looking for technology of leaching of the tungsten. So nobody is doing this, but we have the similar technologies on copper, and we think that it could be feasible as well. So the condition says that it will be. So we have the for this year we will be having the research, and for after that we would like to have the pilot plants and continue that. So as you can see, it's only 3 projects that we also looking for more of them, but if we will be succeed on that, I hope that we will be the good suppliers for European Union for critical minerals, and we'll expand our cooperation on that. So thank you. If you have any questions, I'll be very glad to answer them after the session. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was actually very interesting, and my sarcasm was completely unwarranted. My apologies, Nariman. Next up, we have James Cleverly from Reflex Instruments, and he's going to talk about the role that AI can have in the finding of critical minerals. Take it away, James.
Thanks, Mike. This is something quite different. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is how we can start doing something tangible to deliver these critical minerals that we see the world needs. It's about technology, and it's about how we utilize technology as an industry, and it's how we better deal with the process of finding, defining and mining these commodities that we require. The world is in a pretty sticky place right now. You know, there's some strange things going on. The global surface air temperature anomaly map, that's one from 2023. 2024 has not got any better. The leap in temperatures there is a bit of a worry, and no one can really explain it. And at the same time, as we go through the energy transition, battery chemistries may change, vehicles may be different, but the one thing we probably need is in our infrastructure is copper. And we can see there that prediction of copper supply deficit that we all know about and we all know is coming. So we've got some challenges ahead of us, both as an industry and as a society. And I suppose there are kind of 3 kind of key macroeconomic trends that are kind of backing where we find ourselves today. There's shifting consumption patterns. Society itself is doing things differently. They are technology driven. Half of the problems we have right now is not the energy transition supply chain, but it's actually more around the technology companies and what technology do those companies develop now that will require certain supply chains in 3, 4, 5, 10 years' time. Increasing geological challenges. I think everyone that works in geology knows that we've got this ahead of us. The easy deposits have been found. We now need to go and find those deep, more challenging deposits. And actually, a conversation I was having over lunch was, you know, if we want to go and look for those high-grade systems, what we may find is the high-grade systems actually have the most complex mineralogical problems. So how are we as an industry going about solving the processing problem today to allow us to unlock those deposits? And we have to do, look, I'm part of the minerals industry. We haven't done a great job. Society doesn't look at us in a very good way, so we have to kind of lift our game and do things differently, and that's part of that ESG driver there. But that's just really part of, we need to have this in the very bones and infrastructure of our companies as we go forward. As geologists looking for deposits, at some point, and I know I've got a geophysicist probably after me, but at some point you have to actually drill a hole to prove the geophysicist is right or wrong or different. And at some point you've got to drill a hole. But why do we drill a hole? Because we take a sample, right? We're geologists, we want to look at the rock. Occasionally we actually do something to the rock rather than just look at it. We take that sample to measure something, to interpret, to do an interpretation, to make a decision. And this drilling cycle exists throughout most of our project life cycle as an industry, all the way from exploration through to definition, resource drill out, drill and blast, you name it, we're drilling. And it's a cycle. The problem is that cycle has not been very effective and not been very productive. There's lots of places in that cycle that are delays, we're not getting the right data. And so those decisions, I put some kind of example decisions down the side there. Do I need to add more chlorine into my process loop? Do I need to move the rig to a different place? Those decisions happen too late, and that is killing our productivity. And the one thing we can't afford to do right now as an industry is kill our productivity. So part of bringing technology to bear on this problem is about how do we address those different parts of that drilling cycle with technology to allow the geoscientists, in collaboration with the drillers, in collaboration with technology partners, to deliver a highly productive drilling cycle so that we can action those decisions far quicker and deliver the resources we need to. That's really what we're trying to do. And that's where the technology comes into this piece. And there's drilling optimization technology, there's geosensing technologies. All you need to measure in rock actually is chemistry, mineralogy, some petrophysical property and spatial location. That's actually all you need to measure. So it shouldn't be that hard, right? And we need to take that data, and we don't want to overwhelm the geologists with data. We want to turn that data into information so that they can make decisions. So that's where the technology piece comes in. And the other piece I would like to say as well is that as an industry, the problem we've had is that we operate as silos throughout the project life cycle. And what that can often mean is information collected at one point does not make its way through to another point. And there is a piece here around the value of information, the time value of information, if you like, is that actually collecting information earlier has far greater value, adds greater value. It actually adds greater NPV to our project than it does by delaying and collecting it later. So there's a cost piece here, but there's actually the value piece is far greater. And I think that's something we need to address as an industry, is how we do this. And you can see I've actually put tailings regeneration on there because there's a closure piece here as well that we need to be better at as well. Does society want us to produce tailings? Not really. So how do we deal with that problem? There's around 60 million meters a year of drilling for resource discovery. So in exploration, there's about 60 million meters of drilling done a year. There's about 500 million meters a year done for resource extraction. So drill and blast and definition, that kind of stuff. That's a data tsunami. That's a big data problem if we start collecting all that information I said about on every one of those meters. And so really this is where the process of the technology development around AI is going to be used to help us. Because if we took 10% of that drilling and collected the kind of information we're talking about, that's 50,000 petabytes of data. So now we're into the realm that the oil and gas industry have been in around dealing with big data. And that's coming. We're here now. We could do that today. The technologies exist. So the advent of the AI technologies and that ability to turn the data tsunami into information we can action is going to be really critical in how we do things. And here's just a sort of a snapshot. Anyone who's seen me talk probably has seen this picture. But there's just some portable XRF data collected in the field on a regional drilling campaign. It was collected in a very consistent and controlled way with proper QA/QC, and there is a small mathematical workflow there applied. We run a UMAP. we run a K-means clustering, and we develop some downhole logs there that support the geologist in understanding what those rocks are and whether the rock in hole 1 is the same as the rock in hole 2, and start to build up a geological framework. And they can do that today at the time of drilling. So this is the kind of way that we can take the data tsunami and turn it into information. Another example here, just collecting information down the hole. Something we've been working with a bit is, originally, this is how you go and collect geophysical data down a hole. We've all seen these kind of setups. The geophysicist then hands the data over on a parchment or a scroll or a USB key. The geologist looks at the wiggly line down the hole, hasn't got a clue what it means, and everyone's happy. So one of the things that we've been doing in MINEX, for instance, is to build a driller deployable. So we take our knowledge of how to do memory-based tools from the survey tool world, and we built a memory-based natural gamma logging tool. What does this mean? It means the driller can now go and collect for you a natural gamma log down the hole. It runs inside the rods, pretty easy to do. That data then flows through to a cloud system for QA/QC by the geologist, so that he knows everything's been collected correctly. And then instead of a wiggly line, what we do is we turn that with some analytics in IOGAS. At the moment, we're building that into our hub system. But we turn that into a thing called a wavelet tessellation. And really what that is just a boundary picker. It's just taking that signal and it's picking boundaries at different scales, coarse scales and fine scales. And the real value is to put that in the hands of the logging geologist at the time they're just starting to log the drill hole. Why? Because it becomes a quick log. It becomes a quantified quick log that they then log to. So this is where value can be added in the core yard by getting the driller to go and collect that information. And so there's a connected piece there, there's a cloud piece, there's an analytics piece, and there's a workflow to do that. We can't trust all of our AI, so this is a warning, right? So this is some good pictures here. So this is, the AI art technologies that are around. You ask them to paint a picture of a fisherman catching a salmon in a river. So the original one was that. Well, that's not so good. Yeah, the computer's absolutely right, but it's not what we wanted. The second one now is DALL-E 3, which is in Microsoft's Copilot. I did that about a month ago. It's getting better, still not great, but we can't just blindly trust the AI. So be geologists, be geoscientists, be decision makers, use AI as a tool. It's a tool in your box with everything else that you do, but it's only a tool to help you inform your decisions. So I'm just going to finish off here, really, that where I think that we can go in terms of trying to solve some of the problems that we have at the moment in terms of delivering the critical minerals that we need, is to take the technology and augment our geologists. And really it's about augmenting the geologists so that they have information to make decisions. We start to collect more information, we can collect more data earlier on so we can make more informed decisions. And I think probably what we'll find is that we can start to unlock some of those resources that we didn't know could be unlocked, by starting to collect better information up front, but turn it into information. So I'll leave it there, I think. Thanks.
Thanks, James. Yeah, that was certainly very interesting. I certainly see a lot of applications for that mechanised, automated core logging, and it playing an increasing role in our geosciences going forward. My next speaker is Chris Nind from Abititti Geophysics, and he's going to talk about how geophysics can be used for critical minerals exploration. Take it away, Chris.
Okay, thank you for coming to hear this talk. There's no doubt that there's lithium in Kazakhstan. How much is a question, but there's lithium in brines in the RLC, and there's lithium in pegmatites. And in fact, last month, the South Korean Geoscience Institute announced a discovery of pegmatite, 1.6 square kilometers of pegmatites in the eastern part of the country. The question, though, is as pegmatites get buried under the surface, how do you locate them? And geophysics is a tool that can be used on occasion. the success of a geophysics choice is all dependent on method and technical specs, instrumentation, implementation, processing, modeling, interpretation. But how do we know what is the best choice? And for pegmatites, it's a difficult choice because pegmatites often don't have dramatic or measurable physical property contrast with their host rocks. And when you're exploring for brine, for instance, in the Aral Sea, where do you look? It's a big area, and can geophysics be used to help you focus your tools? So the best solution for your geological environment will vary on your geology, your target. The same group of geophysical tools that you would use for VMS targets are not the same as you would use for lithium. So you have to make a decision, and how do you make that decision? We recommend to start with collecting some physical property measurements. They will aid you dramatically. They will in your choice of a geophysical tool that might be effective for your tool. You can measure chargeability and resistivity. You can measure magnetic susceptibility, density, EM conductivity, radiometric radioactivities in the lab before you even go out to the field and save yourself some expense for collecting data that really doesn't have any contrast. In this talk, I'm going to talk about two geophysical methods that are being used for pegmatites. One is ground gravity measurements. Pegmatites, if the pegmatite is around 2.7 grams per cubic centimeter, if it's been in ultramafics, which are about 15% more dense, gravity becomes an effective tool. If it's pegmatite in granite, you wouldn't consider gravity because they're basically the same density. The other technique that has been used for brines is magnetotellurics, and this in a large area, this you can use magnetotellurics to detect where a concentration of total dissolved solids might be, because that'll be a conductive patch within the larger area. So I'll just go through two case studies, one for pegmatites and one for brines. This is a case study for pegmatites in northern Quebec. This is pegmatite that's basically undercover. All of this area is covered by glacial till. It is a very prospective greenstone belt. It hosts nickel, copper, PGE, massive sulfides, porphyries, uranium, gold. It's being explored, but it's all covered by glacial till. So how do you find it? Well, in this area, magnetics was useful for mapping some of the trends, because the magnetites in the ultramafics, largely in the peridotite, show you the trends. And but then by physical property measurements, we determined that the pegmatites are about 15% less dense than the ultramafics. So a gravity survey was considered. Now, the pegmatites are sometimes less than 10 meters wide, so it has to be a very detailed gravity survey. And in this case, it was 10-meter gravity stations along lines 50 meters apart. And the gravity low in the middle of that plot, you can see, maps out the pegmatite, the known pegmatite, and extends it, the pegmatite undercover, to about 2.5 times the known pegmatite. So it was considered to be a great success in this case. When pegmatites are hosted in ultramafics, gravity is a very useful tool. The second case study is a lithium brine, and this is in Nevada, and it's an area that they did a gravity survey. The gravity low is in the valley is about 20 kilometers long, and the depth of basement was 600 to 1,200 meters. It's a large area, so how do you focus your in the area to find the location of the total maximum total dissolved solids? So they did a magnetotelluric survey and run about 6 lines. In this case, it was a controlled source magnetotellurics. The magnetotellurics, the modeled inversion depth was about 1,200 meters. But it was successfully located the highly conductive area where the maximum total dissolved solids was about 350 meters deep, and they drilled it, and subsequently they're announcing a production of a marketable battery grade lithium carbonate from the Bonnie Claire deposit. The magnetotellurics focused the exploration, and instead of them going absolutely bust drilling. By the way, comment on drilling, it's destroyed a lot of great geophysical anomalies. So that's my talk, and I want to acknowledge the clients who allowed us to show this data. Winsome Resources and Iconic Minerals, and Zong did the MT, and Abitibi Geophysics collected the gravity data that we showed. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chris. Yeah, that was certainly very interesting. That bit about pegmatites, I'm sure will have some people thinking about how they might explore in Kazakhstan for some of those lithium projects using those techniques. Next in the session, well, I know that it was actually scheduled to 5:30, but the drinks don't start until 6, and we've got some questions to go through from the questionnaire. I don't know how many people in the audience were able to complete the questionnaire, but I'm quickly going to go through some of the responses, and then we can have time for some questions for the panel. So I'm just going to go through these, and hopefully there was enough responses to make it meaningful. But there was a question asking, is your organization active in development of critical raw materials, international supply chains in Kazakhstan? And it seemed that about 2/3 were able to say that they are involved in it, and I noticed there's a significant portion that didn't actually know. Next one, please. So this question was about the demand for rare metals is expected to rise, and officials argue that Kazakhstan can meet that demand with the international assistance, and what needs to be done was the question. And clearly there were a lot of people that stated that investment was critical, but more importantly than that, people thought that new technology was a key driver, and obviously you can understand that. These rare earth elements are very difficult to process, and also some other critical minerals are as well. And I see there was a strong focus on the developing local processing for these things, and also as we go down the list, more research is considered necessary, and some people said, yeah, you need to do all of those things, which actually makes perfect sense, because you do need an integrated strategy if you're going to be making some headway on this topic. Next one, please. And the question here about lithium being the new oil in Kazakhstan for the next few years. And it seemed that there's a very negative response to that, which is what you'd expect, because I don't know if any of you attended, there was an earlier talk from Anna Fardell, who previous year's MINEX, she did some work on lithium in Kazakhstan and presented those results, and it's very early stage in Kazakhstan for lithium. There is potential, so I'm not surprised that people have a pessimistic view on it, because that's the status of the industry currently. There's not much work has been done. Next one, please. Now, there was, this question was all about what was the most profitable critical mineral to explore for and develop in Kazakhstan. Obviously, a lot of people answered uranium, and I think that's clear because there's a very large uranium industry here already. So I think it's an easy question to answer in that respect. And the same goes with copper and chromium and zinc. Aluminium, obviously, I know that there's a shortage of viable resources in the country. I don't have any information about that. And then as you work down the list, there's a perception that lithium is very profitable, but certainly from what Nariman was saying with the grades that have been encountered to date, it's not looking that way, but that could be something that technology has an impact on. And the other thing I would say about lithium and nickel is that both of those commodities have been impacted by negative price movements in recent months, and that's really taken the impetus out of the exploration for those metals when the price does that. So there's certainly some uncertainty there, although many people vote, the perception is that there's a lot of money to be made in lithium and nickel. Cobalt, as far as I know, there's not a great deal of cobalt in Kazakhstan. It's associated with the nickel laterites in the north of the country, and I think there's some potential there, and it could be profitable, but it's only like to be so as a byproduct. And also there's a perception that the rare earth metals can be profitable as well, but it does matter critically which ones they are, because there's 17 of them. And then a few people said, yep, you need to do all of it, which I suppose is an easy answer to give. Next one, please. What challenges and problems do you see in the development of supply chains for critical minerals in Kazakhstan? Obviously, infrastructure rated highly in that, although I don't think that's necessarily true in the country. If you saw some of the earlier talks about the copper potential, and the explorers were quite impressed with the infrastructure. And I think the item that tops that survey is the processing capacity, because I do think that particularly when you talk about rare earths, you do need a refinery, and that can be very, very specialized to operate. Funding, another constraint. Political and economics didn't really, still quite high. Qualified personnel, I'm actually quite surprised to see that, because there's a lot of qualified geoscientists and processing people in Kazakhstan, also in neighboring Russia, that are available. Volatility of markets, I just touched on that, and that was clearly a few people were highlighting that as a significant issue. Competition with other countries, that was highlighted as being significant, and again, those people who said it was all of those things, which again is an easy answer to give. Next one, please. Which countries are the most promising partners for Kazakhstan in the development of these supply chains? I mean, I think that from some of the talks we have, you've seen the answer to that. There's a whole list that Nikolai had about who had signed agreements with Kazakhstan and others. And obviously the European Union, United States, the non-China countries really are the ones that are looking for those agreements. And again, actually quite a few people put China on there as well, but it tends to be that China is exporting critical minerals in their processed form or in manufactured goods. It's increasingly harder to find concentrates from that country. Next question, please. Now, this question was a question about the justification of these developing these deposits and investing them, and we had a good number of people that perhaps they didn't understand the question, but the people who maybe did a bit more said that this development and investments justified by the offtake agreements, by the interest in them, which I think is a fairly logical conclusion to make. And then the next group of answers were about additional comments. Sorry, that came a bit too quickly. Go back to that question. Is your organisation active in the development? Sorry, are we going through them again? Yeah, if we could come back to that second to last question, or that last question, please. before the comments on the moderator. I think it was number 7, was it? Or number 6, was it? I think it was just the last one. Yeah, this one. I just hadn't answered that. There was a few people that answered this question and that said that the investment's not justified because of the market volatility and development costs. And I think that's a very fair concern to have, given how difficult some of these metals can be to refine, process and extract, and the way that they come in maybe mixed concentrates, certainly the rare earths. And then the next one, which was... Next one, please, Andre. Which was the comments about the moderator. And thank you very much for whoever put that. Now we can move on to any questions. Does anyone have any questions or comments to make to the panel here about the talks we've had today? It looks like maybe some of the people in the audience are feeling quite thirsty. But I do have one question, actually. And it's for Johannes about one of the comments that you made was about the increase the resilience of raw material supplies. That was one of the objectives on one of your slides, that this roadmap would increase the resilience of the supplies. Can you perhaps explain or give us a bit more background on what increasing resilience actually involves physically on the ground? What do people do to increase the resilience of the supply chain?
I think specifically for the EU, this increased resilience means, in fact, several things. It is one, to develop production inside the European Union. There is also in this new legislation a kind of threshold of 75%, where we want to reduce the European Union's dependency on, in fact, on all foreign supplies of critical raw materials, which are in the list, with certain exemptions for those countries which are qualified as partner countries. And of course, it is more easier for some products and very difficult for others. Another important point in our legislation, in this future legislation, is the increase of recycling. I think there's a huge capacity to doing that, and there need to be regulatory incentive also to do that. So this is also one major incentive. In terms of our cooperation with Kazakhstan, I think from the beginning there was also the wish from the Kazakh side to not only to look, of course, at extraction, but also to processing, for example, develop processing capabilities in Kazakhstan, so and there to increase, I mean, the resilience of Kazakhstan also, and that is also something we are ready to support in our partnership with Kazakhstan. Thanks. I hope it.
No, that's clear. So it really is about that resilience. Is about trying to encourage more supply. So that's the recycling. Legislation and regulation for new projects and technology to process it. Right, got it. Does anyone else have any questions, or anyone on the panel have any questions for the other panel members? It's like Arthur's revving up with his microphone there. All right, well, thank you very much for all attending this session this afternoon. I think it's been very useful.